Last time, we explored the creation of the cosmos, the calling for humans to look after the world around us, and how treasuring our gift of creation is treasuring God. And we spoke about how God so loved the world, and how in the original language this translates to God so loved the cosmos, the whole created order.
But we know that the world is changing fast. Up to 1 million species face extinction, and deforestation is rife across the world. Between 2030 and 2050, it's estimated that climate change will cause 250,000 additional deaths per year due to malnutrition, malaria, diarrhea, and heat stress. Most of these deaths will be in low-income countries, where often the availability of healthcare is limited and there is a low level of climate resilience. The cost of climate change will only increase over time without immediate action. Changes to rain patterns will differ based on location. In some areas, droughts and heat waves will become more common and sustained, whilst other areas will suffer with intense rainfall and flooding. Sea level rise threatens the existence of entire regions, and strong hurricanes will become more frequent. The environmental crisis is deeply unfair and unjust. 74 of the world's lowest income countries are accountable for less than 10% of carbon emissions. The nations responsible for the majority of the damage, though not immune, are far more resistant to the impacts. And within the most vulnerable nations, it is the poor who are suffering now, and will be the first to suffer from future impacts.
So what does God say about all of this? Well, throughout the Bible, we have this story of the people of God turning away from God. And as God is so holy, they find that as they turn away, they can no longer be in his presence. He gives them laws and shows them how to make sacrifices, giving them ways to come back into his presence, ways to be holy again. But consistently, God's message to his people is that being holy is not simply about being more religious. The prophet Isaiah has this message from God: stop bringing meaningless offerings. I can't bear your worthless assemblies. And he goes on to say, wash and make yourselves clean. Take your evil deeds out of my sight. Stop doing wrong. Learn to do right. Seek justice. Defend the oppressed. Take up the cause of the fatherless. Plead the case of the widow. And the prophet Micah says this: what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And the messages of these prophets are written in Hebrew. And in Hebrew, the word that is used for holiness and righteousness is tzedakah. And in Hebrew, the word that is used for justice is also tzedakah. It's not that seeking justice is more important than being holy. It's that these two are one and the same. The Old Testament is abundantly clear that we are called to stand up for the disadvantaged. In Proverbs 31, we hear this: speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy.
Last session, we looked at how caring for creation is one way of honouring the most important commandment: to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. But Jesus says there is a second central commandment: to love your neighbour as yourself. Jesus tells his disciples this in Matthew 25. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Jesus calls us to care for our global neighbours who are marginalised, those who do not have power or influence, and for the future generations who are relying on the actions of people living right now. As we look after our neighbours across the world and in future, Jesus says, whatever you did for them, you did for me. It is a holy thing to seek justice for those who are most adversely affected by climate change.
So how do we begin to love our global neighbours?
Well, we believe in the power of prayer. Something I am trying to do much more of is to trust God on behalf of the world. He is the one who can redeem the world. We can take courage that Jesus provides hope for our world and the vulnerable, that He is to renew all things. And every time I reconnect with creation and God the Creator, I get a heightened appreciation and desire to preserve the natural world. When I spend time outside, I find that it makes room for God to speak to me in all areas of my life, which includes God encouraging me to be proximate to all those that are suffering and will suffer in future.
And something I'm trying to do is to grow an awareness of my own footprint on creation. Perhaps we might want to ask ourselves, what are the main ways that we contribute to climate change? I know I've been really inspired by friends who are willing to change their diet, or their shopping habits, or their transport methods, in order to reduce their environmental impact. Of course, environmental considerations have to be balanced with our own financial situations, and so this might look different for each one of us. But when we decide to make changes, having accountability between one another can be really helpful to help us stick with the changes that we want to make.
When my friend Rachel returned from her year abroad at university, she cut meat out of her diet. This had an effect on me. Although I didn't become vegetarian, I cut red meat out for an entire year and still regulate my consumption to this day. Because of my friend Rachel quietly making a decision to make a sacrifice for the sake of the planet, I also made steps to do the same. What we do has a ripple effect through the people that we know, and we make a bigger difference than we realise.
And I also want to ask myself, where can I contribute to the wider conversations so that the change I'm trying to make isn't just with me and my friends, but what would it look like for me to influence change in my workplace, or in my church, or in my network, or with my MP?
And the brilliant thing about modelling behaviour as a Christian is that you will stand out, and this will bring people to Jesus.
So as we go into our groups to talk about all of this, let's hold on to the hope that Jesus gives us. Let's remember that we have a Saviour who loves the world that He's made. And when anxious thoughts come, when the situation looks bleak, we can know that He is always with us. In Revelation 21, Jesus declares, "Behold, I am making everything new." We hope this will spark some interesting conversations in your group. Why don't you take a look at the discussion questions now? We'd love to hear how your conversations in your group go. And if this has impacted you, let us know in the comments below.
If you would like to explore this topic further, please look in the description down below.